Welcome to Table Talk 5.5. No session today because we're too busy playing BattleBit. Oops. Alright, well, welcome back. I actually have some Ombudsman report things this time. So last time during Table Talk, I talked about the legality of using personality tests in hiring and firing, and I said that it was illegal. That's incorrect. I mistook that when I was reading one of many articles I had read a while back for a project I was doing relating to personality tests. One of them said that it was legally dubious, and I misremembered that and thought it said that they were illegal, which is not the case. So, there are just some things you need to be careful of, which is basically, in short, violating the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. Basically, questions in there can run afoul of some protected categories, or they can be proxies for discriminating against protected categories. So you just have to be really careful, but you can still do it. That was the only thing I had for Table Talk. For the session, so at around the 53-minute mark, there's a bleep in there. I had hit my bleep button on my mixer, and I was like pretty convinced that I had taken it out, and then listening to the session, I realized I hadn't. So they're still in there. I think there's two of them in a row. So yeah, I just need to not do that anymore. We talked about fist bumping. There was some handshake or something going on during this session, and I think Duncan asked a question like, "Oh, did people fist bump in the 90s? Was that a thing yet?" And it was not. It wasn't like completely unheard of. So, for example, it's traditional in boxing, obviously, to touch gloves like fist bump, and it has been for a very long time. But and you can find examples of people throughout the second half of the 20th century, doing fist bumps, but it didn't get like widespread popularity as a replacement for a handshake or a high five or anything like that until like the mid 2000s. And then in the bodies that Tim Bars was helping dig up out at the burial site or whatever it is, they were finding a bunch of metal pins in legs and stuff like that. And he was the guy who was the archaeologist or anthropologist or whatever he is, was Dr. Thorley was saying like, oh, this is indicative of it being a relatively new body. Whereas some other decomposition factors make me believe that maybe it's older. And so I was curious, what's the surgical history of that? Because you'll always hear about like some ancient cultures were trying to do like very complex surgical procedures or medical practices or whatever. So I looked it up. So the term for anything like that is actually internal fixation, which it's sort of like splinting on the inside, or any other sort of screws, pins, whatever. So it started as an idea in the 1800s, and then by the mid 1900s, it was like a common medical practice. Excuse me. So what that means is Thorley is right. The pins being in legs or whatever, or finding someone with a pin and a leg indicates that the body was most likely, from the mid 1900s at the earliest. Or at the very, very earliest, the early 1900s. But if there are other factors that make it seem older, that would definitely be strange. So that's the internal fixation history. And that completes the Ombudsman report.
Oh, wow.
Very exciting.
Yeah, wow. Crickets.
So I've received a lot of questions about Matt Ball. And, it's time to address them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, I was at the grocery store, minding my own business, and I'm one of those people that what I like to do is I'll walk down the aisle and I have my shopping cart, and then I like to put it perpendicular to the aisle, and then just stand there and fuck around on my phone with my AirPods in.
You That's monster.
With,
so anyway,
with sound canceling turned up to max.
Right, I wasn't even listening to music. I was
just
listening
a humming
to
sound that would drown out any noise that got through.
I have recorded my own kind of hype track where I'm telling myself, like, you're really confident. You're going to seize the day. I also record my grocery list that way. I have an audio grocery list.
Wow, that's a huge bummer because you have to cycle through the whole thing in order to know.
So anyway, here I am grocery shopping, doing my thing, and I got recognized. Someone said, "Oh my God, are you Duncan from Late Afternoon Gaming?"
You look just like him on the podcast.
Right. And because I've described myself before.
Yeah, Joe Rogan, 7 feet tall.
Yeah, I'm like 8, 9-ish feet tall. And so they said, listen, I'm a huge fan. What is Matt Ball? It's got a little bit of a non sequitur, but so I then realized that I talked about Matt Ball quite a bit during the last session, and then realized that that's not a real game. So where I went to, like, middle school and high school,
Wait, is it not? That's not a common thing?
No.
Really?
Absolutely not.
We are.
It's a regional dialect of kickball.
It is not exactly.
Oh boy.
So
Well, Matt Ball was when you went around twice. It had
yeah,
4
well,
bases
and
that
actually,
played the duty of
if
8
you
bases.
if you all calm down, I will just tell you what it is.
No.
So Matt Ball is a variant of kickball, but it has some key distinguishing features. So number one, the bases are like giant gymnastics mats. So the bases are enormous. I'm thinking it's something like, what would you say they are, Jack? They're like maybe 10 by
10 by 8-ish. They're rectangular.
Are you supposed to
Right.
like roll around in this giant mat when you hit the base?
No. The idea
we'll get
is
to it.
it's the bases are mats and the game is played indoors. So it's played in the gym. So it's like kickball. It's generally the same as kickball, but the bases are huge. You have to get around the bases twice in order to get a run, and
But as many people
can be on one mat as can fit. So
which
okay.
means there's no like tag outs or anything. Except
it means
at
it's kind of
first
like
base.
dodgeball. Like you pick up the ball and you just fucking whip it at this group of people this herd of people that's transiting between 2 mats and try to get at least one of them out. So it's like kickball, but frankly, it's better because
It's a kickball, dodgeball hybrid mix thing.
Well,
which is better than both kickball and dodgeball.
So
I mean-
I don't know that it's necessarily more related to dodgeball than any other form of kickball.
And yet I said it.
That's true.
And yet I said that it was.
But if you
So anyway,
you don't have to like catch it and tag somebody to get them out. You just have to smack them in the head with the ball, right?
Right.
any
you can do that
contact
in
with
any
the ball
kickball.
gets them out if they're not touching the mat.
Trevor, did you say you can do that in any game? Do you think you get people out in baseball by like?
No, I said
chucking
any
the
game of
baseball at 'em?
kickball.
Oh,
Just ripping that ball at them.
Can you imagine?
Now, I mean, maybe I would watch baseball if you
Yeah.
could do that. But that brings me to my next point, which is why do the best games of our childhood not become sports? Why do we pick these shitty, stupid games to become the sports that adults watch?
Here's my thing. Because now I'm shooketh to my core that the world at large has not gotten to appreciate Matt Ball. Do they have the pin game?
The what?
Please describe.
Oh,
I need to know.
The pin game was one of my favorite things that we did in gym class, where it's played in the gym, and you have you're split along the middle of the gym. So it's similar zones to like dodgeball, but each side starts with 5 pins, and the 5 pins are set up pretty close to the wall, so they're about as far back as you can get in your zone without actually contacting the wall. There's no balls involved. Once you step onto the other side's floor, they can tag you and you're out, and if you're out, you just have to sit down. your objective is to grab the pins from the other team's side. Once you grab one, once you've made contact with a pin, you're safe and you can bring it over to your side. You line it up with the rest of yours. If you can get all 10 on your side, you win. But kind of the weird thing about it is, if you can make it to the other side's back wall and you're touching it, you're also safe there. So what you end up with is you've got people on your side trying to protect your pins. Then you've also got a bunch of people on your team on the far side of the other team's zone threatening the pins. And so the other team has a bunch of their people lined up next to their pins trying to guard them from your people. And it's chaos.
Yeah.
I
Also,
love that
just
game.
a work of art of a game.
So I'm pretty. Here's my theory on why this does not translate to adulthood. I'm already imagining the number of like rolled ankles. Somebody like breaks a wrist. Like there's somebody sitting down because they got tagged, and then they go and like jump over them, and they kick them in the head, and you're like, 30-year-olds are just a lot more fragile than children.
Well, but
I
you're
don't know.
assuming
I mean,
that
look
it's
at-
always an amateur league, I think. Like, if you get a bunch of rugby players doing that, they're not going to get more injured doing that than they are playing rugby.
Sure.
I would also, I have two recommendations. One is that there are no end to the games that we could discuss right now that are much better and more interesting than like football and soccer and baseball and basketball and these more popular but comparatively shitty games.
Yeah.
But so we could replace those. We could replace those with these games. But the other thing is, I would like us to embrace performance-enhancing drugs.
I've always thought that it should have just like give them. I understand the fairness argument, but just give them their own league. That's what everybody wants to watch.
Right, and watch when you split leagues and there's the Mat Ball League with like normal athletes, and then there's the Mat Ball League full of like
People on coke.
roided out freaks. Which one am I gonna watch?
Obviously the second. Obviously.
I think all the performance enhancing drug stuff sucks. Like, I am glad that we have said no, don't do it.
I think it's bad for the people involved. I think it did boost the entertainment factor.
I mean, as someone who rarely needs his performance enhanced, I guess I kind of see where you're coming from, but I think it's a bad take.
No, because I view most sports as ultimately pointless. I'm just not interested in them. I like playing them, but watching other people play them, I've never found to be particularly fun. But so I wouldn't want to create a system that encourages people to do even more to destroy their bodies than they already are by doing something like football. With the high risk of all these impact injuries and TBIs and whatever else. Like, I wouldn't want to then add to the mix, like, oh, and by the way, if you don't also take all these chemicals that like wreck you, then like you can't compete. Like that's a bad incentive structure.
See, I guess I'm coming from a position of I don't care about athletes, and I think a lot of people who claim to really don't, not as human beings. And so what I do care about is being entertained. So I know what it's going to take me to get entertained. And I also know who Shepard and I would have been in gym class. I would have been getting a respectable amount of runs in mat ball, and Shepard would have been standing in the back going like, what is even the point of mat ball? What are we doing to each other?
Someone wasn't listening. I enjoy playing games.
Going back to
that would be me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say I'm the one who would have been like, what's the point of this? Why are we doing it? And I would sit down and then just get pummeled by the dodgeball. So we got three different takes here.
Fun games that would probably be very challenging to play as an adult. Are you guys familiar with Dodgeball?
What? Oh, is this archery dodgeball?
Yes.
I played
Yeah, I've heard
this.
of it.
It's so fun.
I want to. So, for anybody who's not familiar, it's basically dodgeball, but instead of balls, they give you bows that I assume are, not very heavy draw.
Correct.
And then they have arrows that just have large, spongy or inflatable balls for your
Bean
tips,
bags.
so that
Bean
you're not going
bags.
to. They're bean bags. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen ones that look more inflatable as well, but if you've played, then
I've seen ones
you.
with just tennis balls attached to the front as well.
Yeah, or just something set you're not, actually going to kill somebody. And then they give you what looks like just a basic paintball mask. And then you just play dodgeball with it. And there's cover in the area, so you can, like, crouch down, pop out, take a shot. I cannot even imagine what it would feel like at the end of that game. Especially since you're using muscles that you probably don't even typically use. Like, your shoulders would probably be dead. How is the draw on those bows?
Very light, which is good because I was playing with a bunch of coworkers, but my brother and I worked together, and so he was on the other team, and he's very good at archery, and so instead of hitting other people, he just constantly, like, would headshot me, and it hurt so bad. And I would just, like, scream, curse words at him. It really amped up the entertainment value for the whole group.
Yeah, I think you'd have to have extremely low draw bows, especially, well, one, just because you've got, again, members of the general public who aren't archers, but two, a lot of times when I've seen, like, those arrows, people just take regular arrows and then modify them as opposed to designing arrows for that purpose. And so if you do that, you do invite, some form of catastrophe where something goes wrong with the tip. And then if you've got a, too high draw a bow, it can actually hurt somebody. Similarly, the one that I had seen where people had tennis balls on the front, they had just taken regular arrows and, put tennis balls on them. So the weighting was horrible. As soon as you shot it, it went vertical.
Oh.
And it was, like, impossible to get any sort of reasonable distance on it because, the arrow part of it, the shaft and the fletching were doing zero work because of the weighting of the whole thing.
Yeah, this one had pretty good weighting. You could go all the way to the other end and get somebody at the back.
One of the things that I was watching during COVID was these like adult tag things.
Those are crazy.
Where it's a very small arena and it has obstacles that are platforms and bars and things like that. I mean, the whole thing is maybe
I've seen
30 feet by 30 feet. It's small. Yeah, I don't know. I spent a fair amount of time watching that during COVID.
So the funniest thing about those arenas is they look very, very similar to, there's an early episode of The Next Generation where Tasha Yar has to, like, fight somebody in this, like, little arena, and they both have these, like, spike fist weapons, and it looks just like one of those modern tag arenas. It's so funny. But, I mean, it looks tough, and there's obviously, like, a lot of athleticism and, it looks different.
As in mat ball.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing is you take any of the, like, non-traditional sports, anything that's going to be on ESPN8, the Ocho, and, like, if you want to be, the best at it, you still have to be, like, a pretty robust athlete. Now, obviously, like, the level of competition is not going to necessarily be as fierce as, like, the NBA or something, but, you can't just get off your couch and go compete if you want to win.
Unless you use performance-enhancing drugs.
Uh-huh.
Well, the other challenge is if you're going to, like, stand this up, like, where are you going to go buy one of those mats unless you're, like, got an in with a gym teacher?
It's just a crash pad. Yeah,
well,
go to a rock climbing gym.
And steal their crash pad?
Exactly.
But I think there's another point to be made here,
your money.
which is these brilliant games were improvised. They were made made out of materials that were just on hand, and they're still better than the ones that we invest all of our attention in, in society.
I remember there were a couple of games.
Capture the Flag. It's in the woods. With, like, a piece of cloth. Capture the Flag is a better game than any regular sport.
Agreed.
I remember probably the most resource-intensive game that we ever played in gym class was also one of the most fun, and it's also one of the ones that is probably a regional thing. And it also was probably the game that got banned the most often. Like, it kind of got cycled in and out. We called it the Gauntlet.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes.
and
Oh, no.
it was great. So you got two teams, and basically you set up an obstacle course that uses as much of the gym as possible, because this is also played in the gym. So usually what it would do is it would be like a U shape. That way you get the reach of both of the long sides of the gym. One team is trying to go through the obstacle course, and it's not anything crazy, but you gotta go around pads, you gotta jump over things, whatever. And you are trying to just make it to the other side. The other team is lined up anywhere they want on the outer wall, and then the coach is standing inside the U, and the team on the wall has balls, like the ones that you would use for dodgeball, and they're just trying to hit the people who are going through the obstacle course. And if you get hit in the obstacle course, you're out and you have to go back to the beginning. And then the coach, who's in the inside of the U, is just taking any balls that end up there, tossing them back to the team on the wall. So you're trying to go through this course, you're getting pelted from all sides, and you're trying to... You can use the course as cover, kind of, but there can only be so many people on the course at the same time. So if you just hunker down, your own team's going to start screaming at you, so you got to move. A lot of people got hurt. A lot of people got hurt playing the gauntlet, but it was worth it.
Yes,
But
the
it
nurse
get
did
banned
not
a lot.
like the gauntlet.
Yeah. It was always very exciting when you would walk into the gym and you saw the makeshift obstacle course, and you're like, it's back, baby. The gauntlet's back.
That sounds horrifying. I hate it.
It was great. Oh my, it was so much fun.
It was great, and I would watch it too if that's what ESPN was, and it wasn't a bunch of. Yeah, I've said it for years. I think football in particular has like a completely unacceptable play to weight ratio, or whatever that's called.
Football.
It's like trying to play a video game that loads for 4 times as much time as you're actually able to play it. I don't know. I don't understand why people watch it. And I'm not talking about playing it. I've played, flag football or, tackle pickup football stuff before, and it's usually fun. But that's not what the sort of football we watch on TV is, which is awful.
Yeah, no, that's something I think about a lot with sports, is like the watchability. So yeah, I think that football is really bad from that perspective of how much play is happening over the course of like the total runtime of the game. Compare that to something like soccer, where like it's 90 minutes of play and that takes like, about 2 hours. Like, that's pretty good. That's a good ratio. Okay, but where does soccer fall apart? Well, the moment-to-moment of soccer, in my opinion, is not very interesting to watch, because for the most part, not a lot is happening. And scoring doesn't happen often enough. Like, it's very common to have, like, a 1-0 game. And that one goal is very exciting, but it happens so infrequently that it's not that great. Compare
It's
that
the
to...
opposite problem for basketball.
Right,
where,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
A point means nothing.
Right, every
And people
individual
have pointed
basket
out
is pretty
that-
whatever.
Resizing the courts here would probably be a long way towards a solution.
For soccer?
Well, making it smaller in soccer and maybe making it larger in basketball.
Or just
Maybe.
introduce fights like they do in hockey. That
I
keeps
feel like if I was ever going to watch football, I would just watch rugby.
Yeah, I mean, I think rugby is better.
It's just a
Similarly,
better
I think
football.
if you're going to watch soccer, yeah, you might as well watch hockey.
That's
'cause
right.
Hockey is much faster, the play is much more constant, and you've got a better, like, scoring to playtime ratio. Excuse me. Like, it's much
scoring
more
to play
common.
time to fight ratio. That's the key.
Yeah, if you're in the fights, that's there too.
Yeah. It's like NASCAR. There's no point in watching it unless you're watching for the crashes.
And y'all really love suffering.
As long as it's not me.
Yeah, well, we're not putting convicts in there.
But we could.
We're not kidnapping people and telling them that they have to go do this.
I mean, but isn't it thrilling to watch a car just like flip over itself? And
Yeah, absolutely. And spoken as a man who's watched a tremendous amount of those Russian car crash video reels.
like, if I have to watch it, there better be at least one crash.
Yeah.
They're
I will
strapped in.
say,
They'll be
I've
okay.
always thought it was kind of gross. I have not watched a lot of crashes. That is not something that ever like occurred to me to search for. But I have seen a few clips of, it'll be a news story. Okay, there was this race, somebody crashed, and you're looking at the feed that was put over the TV, the like live event, and the car will crash, and then the camera operators make a principled decision to say, all right, cut to the family. And that just seems kind of gross to me. Like the family in the stands freaking out because, daddy just died. And they're like, this is content. Get the content.
Yeah, that's shitty. Stay focused on the driver.
Well, I think we can all agree that legacy media people are bad.
Yeah, they're scummy, unlike us.
Now, I've been working on some audio podcast material of crashes.
Okay.
Where what I do, I basically do the same thing, but I swivel the microphone in their direction.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It's
good.
pretty engaging. Now I can't really get close enough to any of this stuff, so
it's just like
the
shouts and...
You just end up narrating what you interpret their response to be.
yes,
Okay.
more or less. Or I mean, a lot is left to the listener's imagination. I think we have some pretty smart listeners, so I think when I describe a crash that just happened and then they don't hear anything for the next 30 seconds, they can just close their eyes and imagine.
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah.
Changing the subject, Duncan, something you and I were talking about earlier this week that I think might be worth our time to bring up here is talking about like player versus PC action, because apparently you've had some discussions with people who are a little confused about what we're doing here.
So I know what you're talking about, and sure, I don't think people are confused about what we're doing per se. I think they had questions about how I felt about it. So what I think you're addressing is Detective Simon Redding is not doesn't seem to be with the program, doesn't seem to be on board with the investigation that I think most audience members would think like, well, what the fuck? Like, isn't the whole point of this game to look into this stuff? Why is, for example, why does Tim Bars want to go back to the house like he should? And then Simon Redding tells him, no, not only am I not going to help you, but I'm
not going to give you the keys.
I'm not going to give you the key. I'm going to give you all kinds of shit for it.
I think, just to briefly interject, we may have mentioned this before, but that was hilarious for me when I was like, I'm going to go back to the house. Do you want to join me? And he said no. And I said, okay, can I get the spare key? And he said no. And then I got there and I was like, did he leave the door unlocked? And Simon said no. And then I had a moment where I was like, I don't know what the best way to get in is. And then Shepard said, giving up already. And I was like, dude, really?
Right. And I think that illustrates a point, which is, a big part of this is Shepard just being a difficult person. There's little question about that. But no, a listener had asked me like, hey, doesn't that frustrate you? Why is he doing that? There are a few things here which can be unpacked. One is that wasn't a total surprise because we had talked about something similar, maybe like within a week or two prior, where I was describing that I had been playing in a Delta Green campaign where the player characters didn't seem to have sufficient motivation to be breaking the law and risking life and limb and stuff like that, or maybe the existing PCs had, but the player character that I was currently playing, who was new because my previous character had died, definitely didn't have good reasons to be doing this stuff. He got caught up on a trip where these guys were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, breaking laws and talking about killing people and stuff like that. And so I, in character, kept asking them, like, what is going on? I'm not going to keep doing this if you won't explain it to me. And they wouldn't do it. And so at some point, I, in character, stopped playing ball. I stopped going along. And I think, well, and that wound up being very interesting, and there's some interesting role playing behind it and stuff like that. But I think it's very common in games like this for everyone to just take for granted that, well, it's metagaming essentially. It's the players, the people, knowing that there's some objective to the game that their characters don't really know, and really stretching what the characters would do to sort of make that up. And so, to revisit what you initially said, Shepard, I think this is a good case of the player wasn't resisting, because I know that Shepard is ready to receive clues or things like that point him in the right direction, but the player character has no reason to go along with this stuff. And so that was I think Tim and Simon have they've seen different things, so they have different evidence. They have different interests and ways of reasoning and different thresholds for what is good or bad evidence, and so it makes sense that they arrive at different conclusions. Certainly they have different motivations. So having them diverge like that is not a problem. Does that address what you were getting at?
I think so. And one of the other things that we had talked about was, I think that it's something that we can do for a couple reasons. One, this isn't like just a one session Delta Green night at the opera, and therefore we have some time to be able to play around with the idea of resisting the call or refusing it. Whereas normally when we do this, it's one session, or it's one or two sessions, so you really can't waste a lot of time hemming and hawing about whether you should be investigating something.
And I do think, going along with that, I do think that this would be very inappropriate at many other tables.
Right,
so,
for that reason.
For that and others. I mean, there are games, most games, I would say, do either require or encourage a little bit more metagaming on the part of the players. I mean, many people who are listening to this have probably played Dungeons & Dragons before, and it's sort of a trope that some players just will not be a part of the party, or
it's like the rogue who hangs out in the rafters. There's some amount of going along that you just need to commit to if you're going to play in a game like that, because the whole thrust of the game is a group of people fall in together, form a party, and that party goes on adventures. And so in the first session, it's kind of a given that everyone needs to form a team. And the DM can only do so much to make that happen. They can only put so many things in front of you to give you the opportunity and the motivation to join the team. And sometimes players just don't. And sometimes it's because they don't understand. Sometimes it's because they're being obtuse. But if they don't join the party, that's probably it. In a shorter D&D game, it's definitely it, because as you said, you got to get moving. But in a longer D&D game, that's sometimes how you find out that someone is not a good fit for the group. Right. Well, it's something that they say at the beginning of the player's handbook, I think, when they're talking about character creation, where you have to make sure that the person you're making is an adventurer, like someone who has like a predisposition towards doing adventurous things, such that when a prompt occurs, they are more likely to accept than, reject it.
Well, and you saw that in DCC, where we start out at level 0 characters, so you don't create this person, you're just assigned a whole group of them. And we get to this well, and half the players didn't go down the well, because that's who that character was. And so there's a bit of metagaming of like, we all need to go down to the well, or we're all gonna die, let's go. And so that was an interesting situation that I hadn't really dealt with before either.
Right, and that's a game in that case where you've engineered a situation that weeds out the people who are not adventurers.
Right, through death.
And right, and then now at the end you've got whoever's left are the ones who, whether they like it or not, now are adventurers. And then to return to our game briefly, I think it's interesting that what we've done is we're doing a Delta Green campaign with two people who are not adventurers, like in any sense. Tim is just like a workaday engineer who had something weird happen to him, and then my guy is a detective who is was investigating a crime because it was assigned to him. He didn't want to, but okay. So we got wrapped up in an investigation, that neither of us would have asked for, and the nature of the game we're playing allows for those kinds of characters. Whereas if you're doing like a dungeon crawl and your cleric just says, "Well, I don't like leaving my hometown," that's like not acceptable. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Yes, and for many of those reasons, many games effectively start somewhere in the middle of the story. So
right.
Whether it's the middle of this group's story and we start the campaign with you already know each other and you've already been doing this sort of thing for a long time. So when I put a new adventure prompt in front of you, it's just sort of a given that you'll accept it. Or in the middle from a character arc sort of perspective where you are already an adventurer and so you are generally inclined to go along with this kind of thing, and then I just sort of push two or more of you together. This is, I think, what we're doing right now, where the two of you know each other, but in a sense, superficially. I mean, you're friends, but you play golf together on the weekends. Like it's not a much deeper relationship than that, and neither of you are involved in conspiracies or any of the supernatural stuff we'll get into or anything like that. So we're sort of starting from square one. It's both trickier and I think it's more interesting. And if we can get it to the point, and I think we will, that the two of you are literal partners in crime, having a real background there and not a fabricated one will be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and just to return real quick to the original topic, the other factor I think that plays in here is like some degree of trust that like I know that I can have my character react naturally and not believe in the ghost stories and everything else, because I know that like Duncan will feed me something eventually. Like he knows that I'm ready to accept the quest, and so I can deny it right now, and that's okay.
That's why I've made a principled decision to be entirely passive moving forward.
Yeah. Tim, we have to go. Okay, but I just stand there.
No.
I drag him to the car.
My hand hurts.
Yeah, I need to take that month off for my hand to heal. So, but yeah, I thought that was, I like that kind of stuff, like character motivation. How do you start an adventure, that kind of stuff. I think those are interesting conversations that change with the game, the group, the the game system, the campaign you're trying to do, all of that. It's an interesting topic in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's different enough from most other games that I understand why people had questions about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, well, and I think I mentioned it before, but even in the middle of the conversation in session 3 that our characters were having at O'Shamrocks, I had paused at one point and said, like, hey, are you guys okay with me doing this? When we were like 3/4 of the way through. You can't, if you know where the cut is, you can probably find it like pretty easily, but like we resumed play when everyone confirmed they were okay with it. So it was something that, we were, I was aware of at the time of like, hey, maybe people aren't okay with this. But it turned out great.
This is a change of subject again, by the way. Stitch incoming, as they say.
Also not the right use of that.
Can we get like a robot voice saying Stitch incoming? now every time we change topic.
So wait, you're saying Stitch Incoming and Jack, I'm sorry, but you're saying Stitch Incoming, we've been using it wrong?
Yeah,
I didn't say that.
Yeah, no,
I did.
Okay.
Well, we can append her voice on the end saying, "You're using it wrong."
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. No, it's not a change of topic. It's an overlay of something. So you watch the clip, and then it's your hot take on that. So unless Jack's about to have a hot take on your whole conversation, it's not a Stitch
which is how we initially described it, but we have decided to use it differently.
I hate it. No.
Yeah,
Right, 'cause-
language grows, it changes. It's an organic, living thing.
Which means you can do whatever you want with it. Now, anyway, to my point, I was doing a lot of driving this weekend. So I had a lot of time to listen to the podcast. And I was going back through some of the older episodes, and the the amount of times where somebody, usually Shepard, said like, man, there's just not all that much activity on the subreddit. Like, over the course of probably the better part of a year, the question of why are we getting no engagement on the subreddit was a near constant theme.
Oh, I
So the
wasn't
fact-
wondering why we didn't have activity. It's just now obvious that there were more factors.
Well, but the one newer factor that we discovered, which is that you had made it so that people are not capable of interacting with the subreddit, would be sufficient to explain the entire problem. Which is
Sure, but if I had remedied that, I don't know that anything would have changed.
yes, but I just knowing now that it is something that was entirely fixable on our end, it's hilarious hearing it because it's the kind of thing that, and I think you made this point, we could have discovered at any time and we just didn't.
Right, yeah.
So it made me laugh every time I came up.
Yeah, no, that was the thing that got me was, yes, was it my mistake? Of course. Could anyone on the server have helped me identify it? Absolutely. But we
As
continue
usual.
to have virtually no interaction.
If I make a mistake, I've made a mistake. If Shepard makes a mistake, I've made a mistake.
See,
It's
this
just
is
the way it goes.
this is some egocentric bias on your part. You are only one member of this server. It's not all about you.
I mean, you need to like have prompts and people like force engaging. That way, you get the hype up. You gotta have some hype people.
Yeah, well, I did, and nobody responded to them back on the last campaign. So, I just stopped doing them.
Well, very soon, speaking of hype, the website is going to go up. lateafternoongaming.com.
Yeah.
And not only is it going to be just a beautiful visual experience, but we'll also be selling, a lot of things that'll help get us exposure, like vinyl car wraps and stuff like that are covered in late afternoon gaming art.
All right. Yes.
I'm talking to the Goodyear people.
We're gonna have
trying to
specialty
get some-
tires.
No, we're gonna get a blimp.
Oh, great. Yes.
Yeah. So, anyway,
Talked
stay
about it
tuned,
before.
everyone.
The blimp is I think the be all end all of transportation. I think that's the apex.
I
I
prefer rigid
completely
airships,
agree.
but okay.
Yeah, dirigible.
Oh, wait, so are we gonna be able to sell blimps, or is that like a rental thing? What?
Still working it out.
Or so it'll be blimps and then stickers, so that way you can hit all of the target audiences.
And that's, that really spans the price range too. Like if you have a lot of money to spend, get a blimp.
Right.
If you have less money to spend, you can have a sticker.
Okay. Deal. Maybe some pins. Maybe we'll make pins. Not like pencil pens, but ones you.
We'll make gun skins.
Ooh. Okay.
Oh, yeah. That we
Yeah.
need to get in contact with BattleBit and have like a late afternoon gaming pack of skins.
Ooh.
Yes, that's true.
I really, I'm upset that I didn't consider the potential of the Go XLR sample board until last night. Like I got 12 different pads I can use here. I can really use that proximity voice chat to lighten people's day. Just gotta figure out what to put on them.
You definitely were lighting up people's day at the end there when you started playing Reese's Puffs.
we were on a map where you all spawn on a boat, and then pretty much everybody has to get in smaller, like, you know, assault boats to drive to the shore. So for the first, 20 seconds of the game, everybody's in a group. So I was just playing the Reese's Puff rap as we were moving, and I think if I had played it longer, we probably would have won that game.
Yeah, it was a pretty close one. But we did start playing BattleBit yesterday, and it's quite fun. I had seen it somewhere, in like a comment or something, I'm not sure. But people were saying that it was the Battlefield experience that Battlefield 2042 failed to deliver to Battlefield fans. And that was something that the three of us had played a bit, especially me and Duncan, back when we were younger. And we missed some classic Battlefield experiences, and BattleBit is actually a really, really good version of it.
Shepard and I were talking about this last night when we were just playing together, but Battlefield 2142 had a game mode called Titan Mode that, as far as I know, never came back. Like that's the one game that I'm aware of where that game mode existed. And BattleBit seems to be just saying, hey, you guys like Battlefield, and Battlefield's not delivering, so here's Battlefield. And I'm hoping they add Titan Mode, because it's so good.
So somebody once told me that Titan Mode is a ripoff of, or it's in the vein of something that had come before, in like an Unreal Tournament game or something like that, or some other game had a mode that was very similar. So I don't think it's wholly original, but yeah, no, I would absolutely love it. Now, I'd have to figure out how to fly those helicopters if they were gonna have a Titan mode, but.
Those helicopters were terrifying.
Yeah, the helicopter experience was, I'm sure it's a me problem. I was not able to control it the way that I expected to be able to.
Yeah, I was definitely struggling a lot the one time I flew one. I did successfully pilot it, but it definitely took a while just to get off the ground. And then afterwards, I was definitely, I wasn't fully in control, let's say. But really fun game. I had a great time playing it.
Yeah, I was initially skeptical when you guys posted on the server that, what people have been saying, that it's like playing an old Battlefield game in terms of the experience, but that's totally accurate. And the way people were interacting with each other is another thing I want to call attention to. Like the way people were using proximity chat.
Yeah.
It was just very funny. Like, people getting killed and revived. And I said it yesterday. It's like everyone had just gotten done watching Saving Private Ryan or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there were some very funny people in there. I only ran into a couple of people who seemed like they were taking it super seriously and just playing like any other video game. Almost everybody was like pretending to talk or they were pretending to be soldiers and yelling at each other to you gotta get over that breach or whatever.
A lot of people calling other people sir
and soldier and sergeant and all this other stuff. It was great. It's super fun.
At one point in time, I walked through a door, gotten shot. This guy grabbed me and healed me, and then as soon as I stood up, I got shot again. He turned around and goes, I took my eye off you for 1 second. What are you doing, soldier?
Yeah, I those interactions were all super funny. I don't know. I thought it was great. Hopefully I'll find some time today to play as well.
Well, on that note, I actually have some good news.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
I as you know, overslept, which means I didn't have time to prepare for today's session.
Okay.
Which means I figured we could just record Table Talk and then play some BattleBit.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Hey.
Woo.
I was waiting for someone to tee that up as a good thing.
Man, I sure do hate Delta Green. I hope I don't have to play it today.
Yeah.
I only really joined this out of a sense of obligation, so.
Yeah.
Man, all my plans just keep getting canceled. What a great weekend.
That is, sort of related. I felt like an idiot when I got home. because like I said, I was doing a lot of driving, listened to a lot of podcasts. What I didn't listen to was the most recent episode. So I was going to be kind of unprepared today.
Yeah.
I was like, why did I not listen to that?
And I don't, I don't want to give too much away, although I'm sure some of it is obvious already that, the current mystery may involve some elements of time travel.
Yeah, well, I think we've already
Yes.
seen parts of like the scenario that we're looking at right now with the bodies that are old but new. We played something a couple of years ago that had the same setup, and then we just never got that far in it.
Right.
But I've seen this.
Didn't you play it
being-
like 5 times and never make it that far in it?
Yeah.
Point being, that is complicated, and you have to be very detail oriented as the handler to lay that stuff out, or it will become even more confusing than you intend for it to be.
Well, luckily there's no one at the table who like nitpicks or anything.
Well, that's the other thing, is I know I'm going to get my homework graded along the way. So my plan had been, as it always is, get up with sufficient time to read through the material and then listen to like the last 15 minutes of the podcast. So I have a very clear idea of exactly where we were and then what pieces to put out. So it wasn't like I had tons of prep to do, but I need to be more deliberate in this case than I am usually. I cannot improvise a time travel scenario. That's a terrible idea.
Sure.
But I'm a man who knows his limitations. I don't have many.
Really, it's just the one.
Right, and it's that I don't improvise time travel scenarios. That's about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
but-
that's not the worst limitation to have.
No, I know many people with much, much worse ones.
Yeah.
What's funny is, so last weekend, I thought we were doing a session because I hadn't looked at the calendar. And so I was like all ready to go on Sunday morning. But what I had ended up spending almost the entire weekend doing last weekend was like fixing all of my music that I use for the podcast so that I had like 10 to 15 minute loops of everything. Which is something I'd been meaning to do for a long time. So I was all excited and like, yes, I'm finally prepped music-wise to do this session. But you know what? It'll still be there next time.
Perhaps.
Uh-oh.